Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Innovation Storytellers Show. I'm your host, Susan Lindner. And today we are going to be taking a deep dive into one of my favorite places. How do we innovate in the space of the built environment? How do we look at the buildings that we thrive in, the construction that goes into those places? How do we begin to think differently about changing the way that we build from the ground up? How do we conceptualize it? How do we think differently about it? And maybe how do we diverge a little bit from the way that we've always done things? It's the reason why I'm so excited to have my guest here today, Thai Nguyen. He is the leader of Diverge, a corporate venture and innovation arm of Hensel Phelps. Thai is charting a bold new course for the construction industry by reimagining how disruptive solutions are discovered, evaluated, and brought to life. With more than 20 years of experience spanning architecture and construction, Thai is driven by a powerful vision to harness the transformative potential of technology and collaboration to inspire a whole new culture of open innovation that's going to propel Hensel Phelps and the industry as a whole toward building a better future for all of us. So, Thai, thank you so much for joining me today.
Susan, thank you so much. That was a deep breath, I think, to get all that across. Excited to be on here and have a great conversation. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just talk about even getting into the construction space, and where that is. It feels leaps and bounds away from what I know. And can you just tell us a little bit about your own story, Thai? How did you find yourself walking through the innovation door, especially when it comes to all things construction?
No, you're gonna be sorry you asked, Susan. But I think for me, it was not a linear path, right? I think throughout my life, it's been just a series of opportunities, and innovation is one. I think as I reflect, and often I get asked, what is your superpower? Mine honestly was I love change, and I know most people they kind of avoid change, or just really I think the things that are uneasy, or just I think things that are unknown. So for me, I think that was what I realized in the last 20 years was my appetite for change. And I've got my wife can tell you, she's got a rule that says one in, one out, right? And so I have a tendency through everything to kind of explore. And I think within Hensel Phelps was one of those reasons why I'm here today was my desire to explore. So prior to Hensel Phelps, I was in the automotive industry. I was in telecom. I was in retail. I mean, I worked for the North Face for 10 years because I wanted to be outside, and their motto is never stop exploring, right? And so it just
Yeah.
all dawned on me one day that, hey, I love this, right? And so, I had an opportunity 19 years ago to start with this amazing company, Hensel Phelps. And here I am today in this amazing role, really, of trying to help not only our enterprise, which is my priority, but really industry in general, because I've realized that, yeah, I think you need the masses to really change what we're trying to change and get better. And so 3 years ago, I think as I was, still very engaged with VDC and BIM, that was my first engagement into the world of innovation, where, in industry, especially construction, VDC and BIM was kind of like that catalyst to bring
Wait, what are
change.
VDC and BIM?
Yeah.
That's
So
not
I always
in the biz.
acronyms, right? So
Yeah.
BIM is building information modeling, right? And then VDC is virtual design and construction. And
Ah,
so as I was introduced to this back in 2008, it was a new endeavor, right, for us. I think, I think we've been building for so long, and this is industry the same way, right? I think, our industry is one of the last that has really embraced technology in the way that we have today. And it's exciting to be here and kind of witness it. But really, I think back then, VDC was really utilized to be that catalyst for innovation and bringing in new solutions and getting engaged with everything from digital models to, getting better information into the field, really helping in every way that we could. And so within that, I think as I learned and got really to know the enterprise, that's really what built up my foundation, because I realized it was about people, right? It wasn't just technology. And so I was asked really to start Diverge, and again, fantastic introduction. And really, I think for us, it's really how do we implement strategy behind innovation? And then you and I have talked about this in the past. What is innovation, right? And so getting grounded on that first and foremost. What is innovation? It doesn't need to be a technology. It could be a very simple idea that transforms the enterprise. And so today, I think, again, just blessed to be in this position and really embracing change with really mindful strategies of innovation, and then really helping support industry because, again, we're trying to change industry.
so let's break some of that down because, you know, diving into innovation, like going back to that 2008 period, right, when you're really starting to go from analog drawings, models, et cetera, and now moving into virtual, a lot of us can empathize with that. I think we've all gone through the digitization phase of our respective lives, personally and professionally. And that shift, I mean, it's particularly interesting, I think, in the construction space because you have folks who are on the front line who may not have had access to a computer, right, as part of their own training in the build phase, right? And then you have very sophisticated architects and build real estate managers, developers, et cetera, who have like deep expertise perhaps in this space. So how do you, in an industry that is so varied in its education models, its staffing, et cetera, how do you bring in these different technology components as part of the work in the field and in the office?
No, great question. I think for me, and I think coming from the field, when I first started for Hensel Phelps, I was in the field, right? And so like
Ah, you are a
living
hard hat
that,
man.
yeah, living, I think day to day in that environment. And you're right. I think, the within the field, it's so dynamic. Things are changing so fast and so quick. And then everything upstream really reflects to what's happening in the field, right? So, if things aren't installed properly, they're again, things that the field doesn't get that information, it again cause these ripple effects and really a lot of, cost of rework, right? And so for me early on, it was really, I think, everything is that I do supports the field, right? It's that whole mentality of field first, because getting materials there on time, ensuring that our employees are safe and that they're able to go home when they need to, creating efficiencies in the field so they're not working 16, that they can at least work a decent average day, right? And so everything that I do today supports really everything that really that happens in the field.
Is that an industry-wide sensation of field first, or is it
I
really
think it
dependent on the
is.
company?
It depends on the company, but I
Mm.
think, I think for us, it's truly something that we believe. I think we have this philosophy of being a builder, and so everything resonates around that. And, I think in my years with Hensel Phelps, I learned that, and I've skinned my knees and, there's a lot of headwinds where I tried to implement things that were too difficult, right? Thinking that I could change the world and realize that I think when solutions come to us and it's five, steps, I need it to be one. I don't
Mm.
need a solution where I'm putting our people through 2 weeks of training to understand what that solution is or how to use it. And I mean, that's been 19 years of working with so many startups, really conveying to them it's got to be simple, right? I mean, if you're bringing a solution that has really 5 steps or really 4 buttons, can you get it to one easy button? I mean, that's our philosophy. And if you can make it easy, I feel that's where it can scale. That's where I feel it can be sustainable. And I think that's where most effective, because at the end of the day, if our people aren't engaged, I can bring the best technologies to our environment and our jobs. But if our people aren't engaged and they really don't understand why they're using these solutions, and it's not helpful, truly helpful in their day to day, it really goes nowhere, right? And it could be any type of innovation, and whether it's a process or technology.
So talk to us a little bit about that, Ty. Can you give us some examples of some of the innovations that you've worked on that you're really proud of that have made a big difference?
Yeah, I think as I look back in the last 19 years, and for me, it was just stepping stones and iteration. I think in
Mm.
terms of what we've implemented. But here's the thing, I think we are the sum of our experiences. I feel today what I'm doing is really the most impactful scenario that I could be in. Like, just taking those last 19 years, learning from all those different initiatives, working on so many projects, getting to know our people. For me, honestly, that's been the biggest catalyst, is knowing our people, knowing what their needs are, being responsive to them. I've got so many stories where literally, laser scanning was one back in 2010 that was fairly new. We
What
brought
is
up,
that?
it's really the ability to, many of our jobs were held to construction tolerance, right? Sometimes half an inch, 3/4 inch. But for some of our jobs, we were held to 3 millimeters accuracy. For us to truly place work within that tolerance, we needed to bring in a very disruptive solution or technology that would help us build to that specification, right? And so we started to embark with laser scanning back in 2008. 2010, we started to self-perform, but within that, it became a tool. Like today, it's prevalent in every region. We've taught our many trade partners how to utilize this technology, and it's been a game changer for industry. The ability to as-build a facility in hours, maybe days, what it used to take us months and years to do, right? And accurate data within millimeters. I felt that that was one of the most innovative things that not only Hensel Phelps absorb, but also industry. You know, it's a tool today that you can find almost in every shop. You saw the initial costs of entry be very high, but today, I think with that iteration, the cost has come down tremendously where everyone has access to it. And now you see through that technology that beyond just laser scanning, photogrammetry is, you know, getting much more relevant and much more accurate. And so it's interesting that that cost of entry is going to be less and less and getting more people the right tools. And, you know, I think what dawns on me the most is, you know, beyond a large GC is like a lot of the small shops out there, it kind of evens the playing field. If that makes sense.
The technology does when the price comes down,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You're the market leader for a while you're still using the cool lightsabers.
Right. Right.
and
And it
and
doesn't
then the
change
price,
industry until
right?
it's an even playing field where everyone has access to those same tools.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then something new comes out. So what's the cool new toy on the block now?
You know, for us, and I think industry right now, and it's the North Stars of really what this industry faces, and it's global, right? And it's labor shortages, it's really supply chain, it's really being mindful in terms of how we build. You know, is it these one-offs that we build? Can we recycle what we build? Can we be quicker and more cost effective and cut down on waste? And so a lot of what kind of those North Stars are leading me to is looking at different things like robotics, right? The confluence of robotics with generative AI is just mind-blowing today, where, you know, I think there's a lot of fear. I go back to that kind of beginning of this conversation with change and, you know, a lot of people feeling that robots are going to take away their jobs. And in many cases, I think if you look at other industries, they might, right? They might have replaced many workers, but I think within construction, that's far from it today, again, with our labor shortage, with the talent that we do have, and our biggest asset is our people. Can we focus them on things that are more critical, right? I think in things that are redundant, repetitive, things that will put them in harm's way, can we utilize the robotic in that way to really help offset really that human? And there's many cases of that, right? Whether, you know, a lot of our injuries could be from material handling. Robotics can do that really well, right? But the struggle with robotics in the years that I've been engaged with it, its ability to adjust to the dynamic job site. Today with generative AI, it is starting to understand the dynamics. It's starting to adjust. It's starting to adapt, right? And so within that,
Wait,
I'm
so when
very,
you say dynamics, are we talking about like uneven ground and therefore
yes.
like those space
I'm,
dog robots can't really handle the terrain? Or is it, what is the
it's all
dynamic?
the above, right? It's
Uh-huh.
uneven ground. It's like as the project iterates, it changes. The landscape changes. Like what you could see before because the wall wasn't closed in changes the next day when the walls get closed in, right? And so those types of dynamics every day at a job site causes potential for risks of getting hurt, risk if you're not paying attention. And unlike well, similar to the human, the robotic goes through the same thing.
Mm. But it's also fascinating. I mean, you and I, prior to hitting record on this, we were talking about drones and what a critical role drones have played for exterior builds for quite some time. That has been a game changer. I remember working with a utility company back in 2017 who told me that they were able to eliminate something like 50% of injuries simply by using drones to survey where damage was after a storm, for example, and where new power lines had to be put up. That has been a tremendous boon. We also talked about remote controlled bulldozers, like where your
Right?
toy
Automation.
bulldozer from being a
Yes.
kid
Yeah.
is now being managed remotely. And so your bulldozer worker is not actually sitting in the bulldozer anymore.
Right. And
Yeah.
to your point, Susan, like drones have been really a great way to enhance the human optics, right? They're going places and doing things in scale that the human can't do with our limited abilities with having only two eyeballs, right? And
Right.
being at a certain height.
And we can't fly. It's
That's
really
right.
problematic that we can't
That's
fly.
right.
It really bothers me.
Yeah, so drones were definitely a game changer for this industry, and it continues to get better. Obviously, there's some headwinds today in terms of really use cases of how in certain manufacturers that we may not be able to use. But I think on that topic, I think we always try to figure out a way around isolating US, manufactured drones. And it gives opportunities to really innovators within our industry and industries within the US to go and step up and help, this issue. But, drones are an important thing that we do every day. And today, even outside of drones, there's abilities to, when I say workarounds, meaning you can put a camera on a tower crane, right? I think in many ways that's on the job site every day, and it could facilitate really a drone's perspective. So I think we just got to get more inventive and get more creative in terms of really not just isolating on one technology, but finding alternatives and finding alternate means of really replicating the value in different ways, right?
So let's talk about where there's pushback, because not everybody loves a new piece of technology. Not
Yes.
everybody loves change. Tell us a little bit where you've had some, no, not on my site kind of conversations, or
Yeah. No,
that's not our direction. Like, how do
I
you
get it.
manage that narrative? This is the storytelling show. What are the stories that you tell to get people on board with technologies that make them nervous, or that they just feel we're not ready?
No, and I get it. I think that resistance to change, and in my opinion, it's always been a lack of awareness or just really the understanding of how that implicates them, right? I think a lot of people are really kind of pushing back just because of the unknown, and I think what we try to do is really engage really individuals that are going to have to implement these things, or we're asking to them to lean in. And a lot of it is really just calming their fears. I think this goes back to the days I work with the North Face, understanding that when I've got someone 1,000 feet off the ground, everyone's going to react differently, right? They got to get back down fast. How do I walk them through that? When they get scared and they freeze, how do I calm them down and get them back down to the floor, right? And so understanding the human in that way is reflective of what I do today. It's really making sure that they fully understand what we're asking, right? Getting them to engage and understand the reason why. And then here's an important thing, being mindful, like their fears are real, right? And
Mhm.
so when we're implementing things like AI and robotics, there's a fear there. It's whether it's replacing their job or could complicate their job, but it's like conveying it and engaging and telling stories in a way that they get it. Like, many of them are resistant, just again, not to be redundant, but it's just not understanding the why, right? And then really working with them. So when we implement AI, just because we can doesn't mean we should in some cases, Susan, because we miss that learning moment. There's things that we do as builders at Hensel Phelps. We teach our people how to, for instance, there's processes that teach them how to be a builder. Yes, you could put AI behind it and they can hit the easy button and they get the answer in 15 seconds. But through that process of what we put them through, it's a learning moment. They learn how to understand, how to be calculated in their decisions, right? When they're looking at different things from drawings to specs, and that's the fear is if we use technology in a way that's not mindful of those learning moments, at the end of the day, why do you need to be a builder, right? I think if you can bring anyone in and all they need to do is a prompt, why that specialization goes away. It's like literally AI is going to go and be able to design and create structural drawings and do all these things. But then at the end of the day, as a human, there's no engagement, right? And even with robotics, being mindful that, again, the fears are real. Let's go see how we can educate the workforce, right? And then being mindful of their concerns and really explaining to them that, yes, it's not going to replace your job. This is what it's doing. Again, keeping you out of harm's way, putting it in positions that are, again, doing tasks that are redundant and repetitive that no human wants to do, right? And so I think that's the key. I think it's engagement with the individual, the people, and then really within that, working with them to subside their fears.
Yeah. So is there a time where that hasn't worked, Ty?
Oh, absolutely. I think there are times, but it's just at that point, it's agreeing to disagree, and I've gone through life with those situations. Not everyone will always be on board, but at the end of the day, it's got to be a business case, right? I think as an employee of Hensel Phelps, if what I'm being asked to do is for the betterment of the company, I, as an employee, should be leaning in and supporting it the best way I can, right? It
So
goes beyond personal,
yeah, well, it's interesting. We talk a lot on the show about empathy mapping.
right?
And, you brought up a really good point, which is like, can I really step in their shoes? Can I really
Right.
begin to see it from their perspective when I'm rolling out a new idea? And an empathy map was designed by IDEO as part of design thinking. And, empathy mapping asks you to ask specific questions of the audience that you are asking to adopt an innovation. And one of those big questions is, what is the agony that my listener, when I tell this story, is facing? Can I get really clear about the pain they're experiencing
Yes.
in light of my new innovation? And they might say, I love my job. I'm fine doing the repetitive task. It gives me self-worth and importance to know that I get to do these 28 functions that feel like, to me, feels like the most repetitive thing in the world, but to them feels like purpose. And so getting to know their agony around those tasks is really important. And
Yes.
then in the event that they wound up saying yes to that, what would be the personal gain for them?
Right.
And getting really clear about that outcome of what it means for them. So if they say yes, could it potentially mean a raise or a promotion? In the world
Right.
of AI, it might mean keeping your job if I
Yeah.
decide to adopt this new change, right?
Right.
If I decide to use the robot instead of going out there myself in a hazmat suit.
Right. Or
Well,
really the conveyance that really, I think that repetitive task that you're doing 20 times a day, imagine if you didn't have to do that, but then you can go and focus on this, this, and this, right? To
yes.
grow yourself, right? I think that's the piece, I think, with any human. And status quo, I don't know too many people that are happy with status quo. I think we're always trying to figure out better ways to do things.
Oh,
Whether,
Ty, you haven't been to the post office recently, huh?
no, God, I'm sure that that list is long. You're right. But there are things I think, that, yeah, it just should be better served iterating and improving. So you're right.
Yeah, I think we are in an interesting minority, especially listeners of this show, who are like, of course we want to change. I want to change my cereal every day. Ty, I love to cook. I don't eat from the same continent twice in one day.
Wow.
Like
That's
I'm
good.
I'm in need of variety all the time. Like
Yeah.
I rarely go
Agreed.
back to the same restaurant. Like I just love new as part of my DNA. But there are lots of people who want to walk into a bar and hear Norm called out each time
Yes.
they go in, right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think really helping to spell out what is the benefit they hope to get out of it in the event that they said yes. And the
Yes.
last piece of this empathy mapping is to also be honest and say, let's talk about the pain you're going to incur by saying
Right.
yes to the dress.
Yes.
In the event that you decide to say yes to AI, you're going to have to learn how to prompt. You're going to have to learn how to
Yes.
feed it data. You're going to have
Right.
to learn other skill sets. But by the way, that learning curve is going to serve you in the next 4 to 6 months in ways you can't even imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then it could even give you the wrong answer, right? I mean, you can't assume, right? Everything that comes out is right. So yeah, you're
Yes,
right.
the
I think,
delusions of AI are very
yes,
fun.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So, recognizing that we all kind of skin our knees on trying to share innovation with other people, from where you sit, Ty, what do you think is weighing heaviest on innovators today?
I think years ago, we didn't have that many solutions or options in industry. Yeah, I think where we are today, I can honestly say, and we look at 30 new solutions every month. There's a lot
Wow.
coming into our industry from, just amazing innovators, right? That have great ideas that want to change and help our industry, which is fantastic. But I think the double-edged sword on that is that we have too many options to choose from, right? I think even if you look at, like, for instance, reality capture solutions, there's like 20 plus
What's a
solutions.
reality capture
It's
solution? I feel like
yeah,
I
so
might need that for myself.
yeah, no,
How I capture reality.
it's the ability to go and as built the daily, progress of a job site using, 360 cameras, photogrammetry, drones, right? It's, capturing reality on a regular cadence, right? That then that data can be used to cross-reference other data sets like schedule and give, superintendents percent complete, give our QA QC managers installation to design, does that match, right? And so these solutions are prevalent in the industry. It's a good thing, but the bad thing is that there's so many options. Like, what do you choose from, right? And so
Oh,
that's the complexity, I think, of
it's
innovators
the
today.
cereal aisle conundrum.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, or potato chips.
Yes.
But yeah, again, I think that's the complexity. And now with AI, it's really introduced another complexity where, it has a lot to do with governance. Like, is our data being democratized? I mean, how are they using our data? Our data is important. We have to protect our owners' data, right? As well.
Mm.
And then as our trade partners are engaging, how are they protecting our data and our owners' data? And so that complexity is honestly some of the strongest headwinds in industry today and
Wow.
embracing AI is like, What is their outlook on governance, right? Do they feel they have a handle on really where their data is going, where it's being kept? And so that is, I feel, one of the biggest headwinds is really that environment of really how do you manage through those complexities?
So if we decide to look forward, Ty, do you think leaders are really equipped to navigate AI, remote work, hybrid teams, all the changing economic realities with tariffs that are happening now? How are you looking at it as you look out through the end of this year into the next year? What are you seeing in the construction space?
So again, very dynamic, right? In terms of our environment today. And and I think for us, it's always been, and we've talked a lot about like bottom up, right? I think our people engaging with them, getting them to giving them that awareness and understanding of why we do what we do. But I think it's just as important as really with our leadership and top down. I think in my role, our leaders are there for a reason, right? They're deserving of where they are. They've, again, are very good at managing risks. And in my role, I'm very mindful of making sure that with everything that we do, there's due diligence, right? We're dotting those I's, crossing those T's. I need to give them the best information I can when it comes to every facet of innovation. And they've always been great to support, right? And make those right decisions. I think for us, as we navigate through these things, it's a team, it's not any individual. So as our leaders are getting really information brought to them, these inputs, I feel very confident that they can make those right decisions and really keep Hensel Phelps pointing in the right direction. Within that, as the leaders around the country today, many of my peers and many of our competitors are of that same mindset of really making mindful decisions. I think to navigate this complex environment, whether it's, it's data privacy, whether it is robotics, whether it's sustainability issues, whether it is supply chain that we all face, right? It's really, taking the best inputs that we can, making sure there's due diligence around that, and then having the right business case to prioritize these types of initiatives to go and support and put resources behind. So.
I mean, how do you plan when a tariff could spike the cost of building materials? Like I'm thinking about like Canadian timber,
Right.
so dramatically when the supply chain around a drone could get stopped overnight when it's your primary source of doing that reality capture work.
Right.
Like how are you adjusting on the fly? I mean, I think dynamic might be an understatement of
Yeah.
what you're experiencing. I really feel like construction is on the front line of this tariff discussion, perhaps
Yeah.
more than any other industry, more than consumer electronics even.
Right. No, and it's a great question. You just use AI, Susan. That's the answer. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's really, I think it's it puts more stress on our change management teams, and that includes our leaders, right? And our boots on the ground with these unknown times and decisions that are being made. You got to do your best. I think again, the key is to make sure you get to your people and you take care of your assets, right? Because it can cause frustration from top down, bottom up, right? Being mindful of that. It's a lot of stress that we have today as builders and understanding how really material costs are changing. We saw that through COVID, right? With really supply chain getting shut down, not knowing, how to even get switchgear for years. Or, I think we, as a human, we're just outside of construction, we're dealing with toilet paper. In construction, we were dealing with many more serious things where it's like, wow, how do you make those adjustments? Now that, when you bidded that job, you locked in that rate, and now, to your point, if tariffs are hitting, those escalation in costs for materials could really be detrimental to the success of that job. So I don't have an easy answer, Susan, but you have to be just really leaning in, reading all the tea leaves, right? And really relying on your people to really lean in and help you get the best inputs so you can make those on the fly adjustments. It's difficult. I don't know any organization that says this isn't. I think everyone, even our suppliers, are struggling with this, right? And understanding supply chain, it affects all of us. I think we just got to work together as an industry and do our best to support each other. So
Yeah. And maybe apply a little pressure to be like, seriously, like we, I mean, I remember during COVID, everybody was remodeling their homes because nobody
hmm
was moving.
Right.
And the supply chain issues just to even get,
hmm
wood to add an addition to your house or carpet or an appliance or
Yes.
anything was so challenging. And I know 3 days ago there was a report from the ports of Newport, or maybe it was Long Beach and LA, that for the first time since COVID, no no cargo ship had left China.
Wow.
And so, it's that was the first time in, years that had taken place,
Well,
because people are really terrified about how much to order and so forth.
sure.
So I think you are the canary in the coal mine out of all industries to let us know where things are happening. And that's a big weight to bear
Yes.
for the
Yeah, we're
rest of us.
hopeful. We're definitely
Yeah.
hopeful.
All right. So Ty, I ask all guests on this show three very important questions, my hot seat questions,
Okay.
when they come on the show. So let me ask you, what is the greatest invention of all time?
Oh my God. I think, you and I talked earlier, right, a little bit about some of this. I feel the plane was. I mean, I
Mm,
think prior to that, I think we were so limited in terms of where you can go and what you could see. Selfish for me, I love traveling, the ability to get on a plane and be somewhere so remote and distant in a matter of hours or days. For me, selfishly, as I look at the world, that has been a huge game changer for us, right? That whole ability to go and explore. But yeah, that's my answer.
yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And we're here to dispel the myth that anybody innovates on their own, that there's not actually a team. The hero innovator is a myth for us on this show. So
Right.
if you had the opportunity to join any innovation team in history, which team would you have joined?
I'm going to be selfish. You say history, but that could have been Diverge last year. So honestly, today, and I'm honest, I feel so blessed and fortunate to kind of be in the role that I am today, and with my amazing team members and just the enterprise of Hensel Phelps to support. That's my honest answer. I mean, I am just so grateful to kind of be in my role, and I feel today being in construction and being in this role is, yeah, I don't want to be anywhere else. I mean, it's so exciting to see how this industry is changing, what we're embracing, how we're sharing. I mean, the sharing piece in the last 3 to 5 years has been impressive. Like the transparency of what we're doing. It's not about the tools that we have. It's really about really best practice and how we can learn from each other. And I can honestly say that I wouldn't want to be anywhere else except for today and what's being involved in the transformation that I'm seeing within construction today.
Okay. And my last question is, what is the innovation that the world needs now?
Oh boy, that is a hard one. I didn't see that on your list, actually.
Always keeping you
What-
on your toes. That's why they call it the hot seat.
I know. I think the one innovation is if I could, I think the rate of change, right? If we had some innovation that could really help us as humans process like the rate of change and just so many things that are coming at us, and every one of us has really a way to go and process that. Like for me, a lot of times I get in my bike and I go for a bike ride to help me calm me and put me in the right state of mind to process. And if we just had some innovation that's specific for construction that can really help us process the rate of change, whether that comes from design to the GC, it comes from really the GC to the trade partners, especially in some of our most complex projects, is really as much information that goes back and forth. Right now, we do it through very traditional means and methods, but if we had some amazing technology or innovation or new process that would help us absorb the rate of change and to really make the better decisions, for me, that would be fantastic.
Well, Ty, awesome answer. Thank you for being on the show today. If people want to get in touch with you and learn more about Diverge, Ty, how do they do that?
Yeah, just reach out to us at Diverge at, I'm sorry, Thai at Diverge dot VC. So Thai at Diverge dot VC. Or even diverge at henselphelps.com. That would be probably the best way because it goes out to my team. So yes, once again, I think the best way to reach out to us would be diverge at henselphelps.com.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Ty Nguyen, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much, Susan. This was great.